Gypsy Rose Blanchard really is out here doing the most. She wants to badmouth her mother any chance she can get. And she wants to play the perpetual victim, even by heavily implying and insinuating that her mother was so bad she had to commit this brutal, vicious, heinous crime. It's been 2 years since the media dropped trailers for the Prison Confessions of Gypsy Rose Blanchard, the 6-part docu-series about her being granted parole, being married in prison, being released from prison on December 28th of 2023. And of course, we know that this airs on Lifetime on January 5th of 2024, just a week later, which was already strategized by her manager, Mike Stanfield, and Melissa G. Moore, which means that they had spent a significant amount of time much prior to October 12th of 2023 filming these 6 episodes that are an hour long each. That they were filming her marriage to Ryan, which happened the summer prior. They married on July 21st of 2022. So they had been filming prior to the summer of 2022. That's at least a year and a half before she's released on December 28th of 2023. And yes, she has come very close to straight out admitting that she is responsible, that she did this, that she is responsible for pulling Nick into this, but she stops short of full accountability and responsibility. And if she did that in the very beginning, there would be nothing that anybody could say. As far as her debt to society, she's never asked for forgiveness from anybody. In fact, she says, I don't give an F about a following. I don't give a F about you. I owe you effing nothing, but I owe my daughter everything. Well, then that comes down to truth. Your daughter deserves the truth. The world deserves the truth, because when you decided to take part in mainstream media networks in exchange for money to monetize your life, your crime, then that should have at the very least came with the truth. But the opposite happened. Everybody was sold a false narrative that didn't exactly exist in the way that Gypsy Rose Blanchard was pushing it. So therefore, that is not truthful. Because the truth would also be admitting things that she does not want to admit. Things that factually took place, things that factually happened, the way that it happened. Now, we know that she tried to take her mother's life twice before ever meeting Nicholas Godejohn. In the spring of 2011, and then there was the incident that took place on June 14th of 2011. And we know that because Dee Dee Blanchard's medical records prove that she had to go get emergency medical care for that instance. And that specific incident wasn't isolated because Gypsy had tried it previously. Now, in the early spring and summer of 2011, she did not meet Nicholas Godejohn yet. She did not meet Nicholas Godejohn until October of 2012 online. She found his profile, self-admitted, she found his profile. She reached out to him. She and he both say that she is the one that made their relationship exclusive, boyfriend and girlfriend, after only 4 days. And then she proceeds from October of 2012 all the way through October of 2013, all the way through October of 2014, all the way to June of 2015, manipulating Nicholas Godejohn into being her accessory to her crime, her co-conspirator. by the very legal standard, by the very definition of what she did. Anybody over the age of 18, which she was almost 24, anybody over the age of 18 who knowingly causes the death of another person after deliberation upon the matter. That is what Gypsy truly did. Anybody can argue mitigating circumstances, but that depends on how you are looking at those objective mitigating circumstances. Some people, in their opinion, Dee Dee Blanchard was a fantastic, wonderful mother. Other people, not so much. And those mitigating circumstances depend on who's looking at what. But they're looking at it through subjective eyes, through a subjective lens, not an objective one. That is where I think a lot of people have had issues with her getting out in only 8.5 years. And the fact that Nicholas Godejohn is spending his life, his natural life in prison for this same exact offense. I have always said, and people don't want to hear this, but this is the truth. There is no place in America where Caucasian women are treated with more privilege than any other place in America, any other system, systematically, than the incarceration and criminal justice system. And that is a fact. I have done videos showing proof after proof after proof after proof that white women get lighter sentences, or if they even get charged, arrested, prosecuted at all. We have seen it with the likes of Casey Anthony, Karen Reed, even very light sentences like Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Did you know that in 2024, a woman was sentenced to 9 years in prison for stealing chicken, yet Gypsy Rose Blanchard takes a whole person's life and gets out in 8.5 years? It is just a fact that when it comes to crime, okay, out of 340 million American citizens, 73% of that is Caucasian. The other 27% is minority. About 16% of that is African American, making up the others Indigenous, Hispanic, Asian. Caucasian women are over 6 times more likely to have a lesser crime and sentence than even a Caucasian male counterpart. And that is a perfect example of the same exact crime for the same exact 2 kids, Lori Vallow Daybell and her 5th husband, Chad Daybell. Same exact state, same exact crime for the same exact 2 children. He gets sentenced to capital punishment. She does not. They were her kids, and this was her orchestration of the entire thing. Yet the legal system throws the book at him, but not her. I have said it, and I will stand by it because it's fact. I have researched this time and time and time again. People don't want to hear it. I am a white woman. Trust me, it doesn't sound favorable, but it is the truth. There is no place that white women are more privileged than the criminal and incarceration legal systems of the United States of America. We have seen white women get completely acquitted and off of crimes like taking a life or taking their babies' lives, or even getting out of having to face capital punishment for taking the lives of multiple children. But what she doesn't realize is in her little TikTok trends is that she also is throwing the book at her father too, but she's forgiving of her father, right? As long as her father is helping her push this narrative in the mainstream media and stay famous and have access to her trust fund. But she didn't grant that same luxury, honor, or privilege to her mother. True forgiveness to her mother for what her mother may have done, but lying about it at all just isn't going to get anybody anywhere. And that is fundamentally the reason why true crimers will not stop when it comes to this case. Because Nicholas Godejohn was unfairly treated and everything pinned on him, the book thrown on him. It had effects, profound effects, even on his family. His own mother is no longer here. Gypsy's own medical records debunk a lot of what she has claimed to be true. But for such a horrible mother, it's really weird that she smiles in every single photo ever taken of her. Even Gabriel Fernandez did not smile in the majority of photographs. The only ones you see him smiling in is when he's at school with his teacher. And if you know what this child suffered and went through. But people would love to push this narrative to excuse the revenue stream, the infamy, pushing Gypsy Rose Blanchard into mainstream media, that Dee Dee Blanchard is the absolute monster that Gabriel Fernandez's mother and her boyfriend were. Gypsy not only told Nicholas Godejohn that she was sleeping on a dirt floor in a shed with bugs, but she also told everybody multiple times that she had been chained to a bed for over 2 weeks, even though that had been debunked, that she had been attending events during that said 2 weeks. Therefore, she couldn't have been chained to a bed, held against her will, starved, and forced to urinate in a bucket. And if you've read all of her prison emails, if you have read all of the text messages between her and Nicholas Godejohn, their Facebook messages, and of course there was a lot of messages on the Christian Dating for Free website as well, you can see that Gypsy Rose Blanchard is never on the defense. She's always the offensive perpetrator. She likes to take people on emotional, mental roller coasters. She likes to love bomb and then pull that love away. Love bomb and then pull that love away. To manipulate the person she is romantically involved with into doing what she wants them to do. Behaving the way she wants them to behave. To do the things she wants them to do. That was not Dee Dee's doing. That was her doing. But let's just stop for a very quick moment here. Dee Dee Blanchard, even though she was not a perfect mother, even though she may have been doing things to supplement their finances, to be able to make sure that there was a roof over her and Gypsy's head. Let's take a look really quick. Let's look at the case of George Floyd. George Floyd had all of these arrests and convictions before his life was taken. Including breaking and entering into an apartment where he did this to a woman. A woman. But as you know, addiction is a disease, and George Floyd was suffering with a very severe addiction. Does that make any of his criminal actions excusable? No, not at all. Charlie Kirk was just assassinated by a 22-year-old young man named Tyler James Robinson because he felt that Charlie Kirk spread too much hate on September 10th of 2025. Charlie Kirk did not have any criminal history at all. But you know who does now? This person. You can't sit there and accuse other people of fascism and then commit something that is fascist. Like saying, oh, my opinion is that person spreads too much hate. I don't like what they say. I have the right to end their life. Nothing excuses taking a life. That is why in the Torah, in the Holy Quran, in the Holy Bible, across multiple faiths, whether Hinduism, Buddhism, the cardinal rule is always that you shall not kill. To kill another human being and try to excuse it away because this person was horrible, because this person was abusive, because this person did these things. Therefore, it excuses somebody else having the very violent plan or orchestration to take somebody else's life. Is absurd to me. And you can't place less value on somebody's life just because they are suffering with addiction, because they are suffering with poverty and circumstance. You can't place less value on somebody's life because of their race, because of their addiction and their criminal history. Because here's what people aren't understanding. It's not necessarily about the victim. It's about not being okay with a person taking another person's life. It is a very violent thing to do. It's the one thing that even if you try to make amends for the rest of your life and try to seek true redemption and forgiveness It's the one thing you cannot make amends with, because you cannot bring people back from the dead. The reason why people like me are into true crime is because all life has value, and it is in no one's hands to take somebody else's life, period. People like Gypsy Rose Blanchard, people like Tyler Robinson, the fact that they were able to do what they did is problematic in America, because there are countries on this earth that have over 1 billion, close to 2 billion people, and they have nowhere near the crime statistics and rates per popula that the United States of America has, with only 340 million American citizens. And with politics always being involved is a problem, because if somebody is very leftist and left ideology is the base of their belief system, you see them allowing people out in 8.5 years based on things that are not objectively true. But when that same thing happens to somebody that doesn't have a criminal history or addiction issues, or is not impoverished and came from a good family that was well off financially, somebody who is beloved and outspoken for their belief system, and we find out the perpetrator is a Caucasian young male, well, they're going to seek capital punishment, of course. But they didn't on her. And we all know what happened with Lori Vallow Davis. She didn't either. Karen Reed got off. Casey Anthony got off. But in these types of crimes, nobody goes unscathed. People like Nicholas Godejohn have the book thrown at them. Every single lie put on his back. That's not his burden to carry. That's Gypsy's, because that's her orchestration of her crime. She hasn't completely owned it. She's hid behind, I did the crime, but I did my time. That's not responsibility. That's not acceptance. That's not accountability. That is not fully acknowledging, admitting, and coming to terms with what she truly did, and trying to correct the media narrative that she has put out for 10 years. So the whole reason why I have gotten into true crime myself is it doesn't sit right with me. Some people look at this case or that case and they justify taking a life. And then in other cases, if the person is liked, beloved, or you align with their political affiliations, then the book comes down so hard on the person who took that person's life. But in other situations like this, somebody else is wrongfully serving the sentence that should have been given to Gypsy. Talk about mitigating circumstances. Did they take into consideration the manipulation for almost 3 years, from October of 2012 to June of 2015? The emotional mental roller coaster that he was taken on as a young man that has autism. The fact that she's free to not only make money, become infamous off of this crime. The fact that she has been caught lie after lie, inconsistency after inconsistency, and still has not corrected the narrative or even sat down and had a true interview to sit down and really discuss and talk about how things really happened, what really happened, what was the objective truth. She's never actually said the words that, yes, I did this. She's never asked for forgiveness. So you can't grant forgiveness to somebody who hasn't morally asked for it. You can in a spiritual sense by saying, I'm going to forgive this person for my own heart, for my own mind, but that's not for me. That's for Dee Dee's family. That's for Nick's family. That's for Nick, for them to either come to that place or not. But the fact that the media not only allows it to happen, but then they're going to pay her for it. The only trauma that she has is the trauma that she helped create. The trauma that she has inflicted and perpetrated on others. And as far as arguments go, you know she's on the offense, that she is the perpetrator of most arguments because she cannot live without the drama and the attention. That's why the first thing she does is come back and creates more drama. Badmouthing her mom. the Torah. What does the Torah say against murder? It explicitly prohibits murder. The fifth commandment, you shall not murder, is a fundamental prohibition against unjustified killing within the Torah. What does the Torah say about forgiveness? The offender's obligation. The person who has wronged another is responsible for seeking forgiveness. This involves sincere regret, an apology, and efforts to repair the damage caused. The offended party's role. The injured party has the right to forgive, but is also obligated to be open to the offender's sincere repentance and apology. Rejecting a truly heartfelt apology is considered an injustice. Now, next, let's look at what the Holy Quran says about murder. When is murder prohibited? Innocent life. The Quran emphasizes the sanctity of innocent life, stating that killing one innocent person is like killing all of humankind. Unjustified violence. The Quran forbids the killing of civilians regardless of their religion, sex, or age, and states that violence is only permitted in self-defense against armed attackers. What does the Quran say explicitly about forgiveness? Divine mercy. Allah is described as the all-forgiving, most merciful, a quality Muslims are encouraged to embody. Human duty. The Quran calls upon believers to forgive those who have wronged them, often linking this to the reward of being forgiven by Allah. For one's own sins, seeking forgiveness requires sincere repentance, which involves remorse, a resolve to change, and sometimes repairing harm done to others. Practicing forgiveness fosters empathy and spiritual growth, preparing believers for the afterlife by purifying their hearts and fostering community harmony. The Holy Bible. What does this book say explicitly about murder? The commandment, you shall not murder, is central, appearing in the 10 Commandments in Exodus and reinforced throughout Scripture. God's authority. Only God has the ultimate authority to take a life, and murder is seen as usurping God's authority. The last person that tried to usurp God's authority fell from heaven and became Satan. Unjustified versus justified killing. The distinction is crucial. Murder is unjust killing, but the Bible allows for justified killing in specific contexts, such as self-defense, lawful warfare, capital punishment for heinous crimes. The underlying motive, intention, and justification determine whether an act is killing or murder. So what does the Holy Bible say about forgiveness? Abundant and unconditional. God's forgiveness for humanity is abundant, unearned, and demonstrated through Jesus' sacrifice, offering redemption and the forgiveness of sins. When God forgives, He removes our transgressions from us as far as the east is from the west. Christians are called to reflect God's compassionate nature by extending forgiveness to others. Jesus taught that our own forgiveness from God is conditional on our willingness to forgive others, as highlighted in Matthew 6:14-15. The Apostle Peter had inquired about the number of times that one should forgive, and Jesus replied that one should forgive not just 7 times, but 70 times 7, or an unlimited number of times. As many times as one asks for forgiveness, it should be granted. When we look at Hinduism fundamentally opposes murder. In Hinduism, you are supposed to practice non-violence and the concept of karma. Killing any living being is seen as a bad deed that will result in negative karmatic consequences, and those consequences will hinder the spiritual journey of the soul. Hinduism has a broader tradition that promotes non-harming thoughts, words, and deeds towards all living creatures. They believe in the eternal soul and that the soul reincarnates after the body dies. Murder prevents the soul from its spiritual journey, and the negative actions create a cycle of suffering on the perpetrator. In Hinduism, it is also encouraged to forgive. Forgiveness is considered a divine quality that spiritually minded people should aspire to. It frees the individual from negative thoughts and emotions, leading to personal bliss and peace. Forgiveness means letting go of anger and resentment, even if one doesn't forget the offense of the wrongdoer's actions. Practicing compassion and forgiveness is seen as a fundamental way to connect with the infinite, fostering a sense of unity with others. Forgiveness is integral to living a dharmatic, moral, and ethical life, which promotes the well-being for both the individual and the community. Balance with prudence. While forgiveness is encouraged, it is not indiscriminate. It is acceptable to forgive emotionally, but still use intelligence and take necessary countermeasures if the person remains a threat. Not only must one forgive others, but one must also seek forgiveness for wrongs committed through practice, like charity, purification, rituals, and introspection. It also states that the role of God's will is to not seek revenge unnecessarily, which also leads to inner peace. When we look at Buddhism, it says that Buddhists consider murder a severe moral violation, primarily because it contravenes the first precept, which is to abstain from taking life. This prohibition stems from a fundamental practice of compassion for all sentient beings and the recognition of life's value. The act of killing has significant negative karmatic consequences. Murder, premeditated murder, is a serious offense, and even celebrating or encouraging killing carries negative karmatic repercussions. Buddhists also explicitly believe in forgiveness. It says that for Buddhists, forgiveness is fundamentally for the forgiver, a way to free oneself from the pain, anger, and mental poison of holding a grudge. Forgiving cultivates inner peace. It breaks the cycles of hatred. It promotes spiritual growth. In Buddhism, the process of forgiveness, understanding the root of suffering, developing wisdom and compassion. A key insight is that suffering, including resentment, arises from within the mind, not just from the actions of others. Practicing loving kindness, cultivating goodwill towards all beings, including those who have caused harm, is a core aspect of forgiveness. Letting go. The practice involves intentionally choosing to let go of the pain and the desire for retaliation, not by denying the past, but by no longer being defined by it. Forgiveness is an act of caring for your own well-being, not just for a favor to the person who caused the harm. It is not a weakness. Forgiveness demands courage and integrity to face and release painful emotions. The mind's role. The practice involves changing your relationship with your own thoughts and emotions, allowing for a shift in perspective. That shift in perspective is critical to all faiths because you cannot be obedient to God and carry God's will if you allow your own thoughts and feelings to control and dictate you. And sometimes thoughts can control feelings and feelings can control thoughts. So it doesn't matter what faith you may hold or if you hold no faith. The ethics, the values, the morals of not only not killing, but coming to a place where you grant forgiveness to those who ask for it and even sometimes those who do not. That fact and truth is explicit across all faiths, and depending on the circumstances, there are religions that do believe that capital punishment serves as a consequence to committing first-degree premeditated murder in a heinous way.